No, I was talking to somebody about it today about how expensive it is because uh, our sister congregation, Congregation Beth Shalom, is doing a trip next year, and it was $5,600 for the trip. And
Wow.
I said to myself, if the trip ever gets over 5,000, how are people going to afford it? And
Yeah.
everybody is saying, well, that's how much the trips are costing now. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I hope the right now, I mean, like on one hand, I hope the demand for Israel is high, but on the other hand, it's just it's all hotel prices. I mean, the airfare is expensive too, but it's not.
Yeah.
The reason that it comes out so much is because of the hotels. So that's why it's that's why it's so expensive, and the hotels are packed. So and there aren't even as many birthright kids, so it's not that. The birthright groups have been trimmed down, so it's tourists. So it's wonderful, and I'm glad that it's happening, but it is definitely causing some expense for hotels. So it's good, and it's also difficult. But yeah, I mean, I've looked at the congregations in other parts of the country too. I think I was looking, Dennis Prager is doing a trip. He's doing a trip that he's leading to Israel with some other radio person, I think. And the trip they had, what they did on that trip is they were doing different levels of hotels, and so they had different possibilities of like different levels. And I think they had three different levels of hotels, not two, but three different. It's going in October, so it's not even going during. It's Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, which those are interesting guys, and they have a good following and stuff. But I was amazed at I was also amazed at kind of the the fact that they had these different, a few different levels. I'll just show you. I mean, it's interesting because, a lot of trips to Israel, a lot of, groups that go, they get, you think that they'd get kind of like they'd get a good, good rate. And yeah.
That's got to be a nightmare picking everybody up in the morning.
Yeah, so
and it kind of ruins camaraderie.
Why would they have three different hotels? You're only sleeping there.
Prices.
Yeah, well here's what I found interesting. This is, I'll just show you. It's actually four different.
Oh my!
Actually, four different, because there's
3-star, 4-star,
and they have 4-star with an executive room, which I'm not really sure the difference. And then
5-star.
So if you do 5-star, yeah,
just go all the way to the top, see what the top is, and it's left.
I did.
No, I mean,
I know.
How much was it?
So here's the 5-star is 70. It's you see it right here. It's 70. It's 70. It's
$8,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
with flight.
That's with the flight.
Grand.
That's with the flight. No, that includes the flight. This one includes the flight. It's just the tour only is 8,000. It's 9,000 with the flight, but it's it's not the business class. It's a coach. It's a coach flight, and that's from New York. So that's the
how many days?
9.
And breakfast and dinner?
No, it is yeah, I mean it's 9 days. 9 days. So anyways, look, part of it is that part of it is, yeah, they're including dinner and some and half the lunches, but Yeah.
I don't know why you need a 5-star hotel. You're just sleeping. We learned that the hard way in Africa. It's a waste of time. Unless you're spending time at the resort, it's a waste of money.
Well, when you're touring, and you're right, when you're not in the room, and we're not in the room a lot, as you people know who've gone on our trips, it does seem a little ridiculous. But you know, like I said, that's mainly what you're paying for on those trips. And again, you know, we don't know how much Prager is getting paid to be on the trip. So it's kind of, you know, you never know what the factor in the budget
Right.
for Prager to be there. But yeah. So it is, I've worked so hard to make sure that the price is fair, and that the companies, you know, deliver what they say. And I mean, I was on the phone today, again, this morning, with the company in Israel, because I want to iron out everything, and I want to make sure everything's included. And you know, I take it seriously, as you know. So yeah, I was up at 6 o'clock with them, and I was talking with our cantor, Evan Cohen. And, you know, this is a little bit of there's an added thing here that's special, which is we have the B'nai mitzvahs, you know, for these kids. So I want to make sure everything is also set up for that, because it's a once in a lifetime experience for the kids who, you know, to do that. Well, anyway, so let's take a look at our journey into the promised land with in Numbers. We left off last week. We were reading the story of Balak, you know, who hired Balaam to curse the people, and instead he starts blessing them, and he blesses them 3 times. And you know, where we left off is he, you know, he keeps giving them different vantage points, like hoping that he'll curse them. And every time he looks at them, he blesses them. And you know, one of the ones that we showed you was this great one right here, which is we read the famous, how beautiful are your tents, right? So wait, let me see, I went past it. So he said,
There it is.
right here, right? How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings. This part is the part that became so famous, right? So you know, we talked about how they're compared to the lion. And you know, we finished with this where Balak gets mad, and he says, I called you to damn my enemies, instead you have blessed them 3 times. By the way, one of the things I didn't share about the Ma Tovu part, how fair are your tents. Again, we said that, and that's not even the only line that's become famous. The other one is, you know, when he looks at them first and says, this is a people that dwells apart. And we talked about how, you know, one of the sayings again here too, that kind of stuck to us, is that there's something special about the people, and he recognizes that. But what you know, obviously we say this prayer Ma Tovu in our synagogues, but what specifically about the tents? And so the rabbis actually created a beautiful midrash that when Balaam specifically looks at the tents, what he sees and what God kind of puts in his mouth is that the tents, as he looks out over the encampment, that all the tents are facing the same direction. The doors of the tent is all facing the same direction. They're all pointed, it's all pointed the same direction. So you say, so what's that about? You know, what's the orderliness to it? It's kind of like a military encampment, but you know, I guess you could say there's something special about the order and the fact that everyone was kind of pointing in the same direction. It wasn't chaos, but that's not the point the rabbis made. They said that the tent openings were all faced in the same direction. And that was so that everyone would have privacy and dignity. If the openings are facing each other, then people would look at each other when they were going in and out of their tents. They would maybe see somebody in a not a good state of, unstate of undress or take away someone's dignity or privacy. And by having everyone's tent facing out, they couldn't look in each other's tents. And so what was so special about the tents were that they showed this class and dignity and the respect for people that the tents all being facing, facing the same direction would create. And so that's like one of the little midrashim here that we had and that we should aspire to, which is to stay out of people's business, right? not to be trying to look into someone's tent, and keeping those tents in a situation so that our community respects people's dignity and privacy. And again, to not to be snooping in on people and allowing people to have their space. So that's kind of a nice lesson for us of how we're supposed to be. So again, kind of where we left off is this. Balak says to him, "Back with you to your own place. I was going to reward you richly, but Adonai denied you the reward." Adonai. So he says, now because you did what God told you to do, God's cost you the money. And Balaam replied to Balak, "But I even told your messengers you sent to me, though Balak were to give me a house full of gold, silver, and gold, I could not of my own accord do anything good or bad contrary to Adonai's command. What Adonai says, that I must say." So again, he doesn't say a God, another God, a God. He says Adonai. What Adonai says, I must say. And now, as I go back to my people, let me inform of you of what is this people will do to your people in the days to come. And so now Balaam offers up some information that he wasn't even asked to do. And he does it because at this point, he's kind of fed up with Balak, because he said, I didn't want to come here in the first place. By the way, it doesn't seem like Balaam, as much as he's saying what God is saying, Balaam doesn't seem to understand to some extent, and we saw that at the beginning. He doesn't seem to understand that why, if God is saying all these things about us, why would he even want to be involved in doing something against us anyways? Like, what does he think he's going to gain out of this? So it makes Balaam look like not a good person, just on the virtue, by virtue of the fact that it's not making sense to him. He's saying all these great things, yet he was willing to curse the people. If God really wants this to happen, what does he think he's going to do? So that's an interesting question about, why does Balaam even engage in this, when it's pretty clear that everything he's saying is that it's good, that these people are good. So did he think maybe he was going to change God's mind, even though he's not saying that? Maybe did he think he would do it? So maybe he has something vested in having Israel be criticized. Let's finish up, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Balaam. So he finishes his last prophecy is going to be, and I'm going to tell you more. And here's what he says. He took up his theme and he said, "Word of Balaam, son of Beor, word of the man whose eye is true, word of one who hears God's speech, who obtains knowledge from the Most High, and beholds visions from the Almighty, prostrate, but with eyes unveiled. What I see for them is not yet. What I behold will not be soon. A star rises from Jacob, a scepter comes forth from Israel. It smashes the brow of Moab, the foundation of all children of Seth. A dome becomes a possession, yes, Seir, a possession of its enemies, but Israel is triumphant. A victor issues from Jacob to wipe out what is left of Ir. He saw Amalek, and taking up this theme, he said, a leading nation is Amalek, but its fate is to perish forever. He saw the Kenites, and taking up his theme, he said, though your abode would be secure, and your nest among set among the cliffs, yet Cain, the Kenites, will be consumed when Ashur takes you captive. So Balaam just gave a prophecy that the Israelites are going to destroy everybody on the other side of the Jordan River eventually.
Mhm.
The Moabites, but also the Edomites and Amalek and the Kenites, all of these people. Now, part of this says when Ashur takes you captive, that's the Assyrians, and that's even later. But I mean, we don't like at the time, the prophecy was probably meant to say that one day there'll be a king, which is kind of what it says. There'll be a king who will rule all of this area from Israel, a Jewish king. Now, most people think that this prophecy refers to King David because he did all this. King Saul didn't do it, David did it, and Solomon continued with those possessions on the other side. And then the other kings of Judah and Israel, when the kingdom was separated, after King Solomon dies, remember his son Rehoboam loses control of the northern kingdom, but the northern Israelites and the southern kingdom of Judah both maintained territories on that other side of the Jordan River, all the way through until the Assyrians come through. You know, there were times that the Edomites had some power, but overall, we controlled that other side of the Jordan River. For a few hundred years, we were more powerful than the countries that were on the other side, on the east side of the Jordan. So the prophecy is really saying that eventually these Israelites are going to control this whole area. Now, we already read that Israel, at least, again, even if it was from a different author, it doesn't matter. We read last week in the previous chapters that Israel already took some land from these Canaanite kings, from the Amorites, from Sihon and Og, that they took territory that was in Ammon and Moab. Here, it's not even that they're taking territory from other people that are inhabiting that land, Canaanites who maintain power there. It says they're taking it directly from the Moabites. It says that we're going to take it from them too, that we're going to crush the Edomites. We're going to crush Amalek. We're going to crush those countries that are those nations that are over there. Oh, no, he says, we are. I mean, we are telling the story. So this is a prophecy which, Moab now has been told, the Moabite king, Balak, he's not only told that I can't curse the Israelites, he's now being told that eventually there'll come a point in time when Israel will own you. They'll completely own you. So this is a really, really bad prophecy. It's, again, somewhat humorous because this is not what he expected to hear. This was really not what he expected to hear. And his plan of cursing Israel turns out completely backfire. And for him to now to be sitting with this information that his own people are doomed now. Doesn't say when, it actually says it will not be soon. It's lo karov. It's not happening imminently. Now, look at the phrase though, a star rises from Jacob. Now we know that a star rising from Jacob and a scepter coming forth from Israel refers to King David from the standpoint of this is a king, and he's compared in this to a star, to a kochav. It's 100% a star, okay? Now, 1,000 years later, Christians 100% said that this is referring to Jesus. 100%. And so when they talk about a star in Bethlehem, that's what they believed the star represented, the star from Balaam's dream. Now, it says it's not going to happen soon. So if it happens 1,200 years later, that's fair. The fact that it happened maybe 150 or 200 years later, probably around the time that this was written, makes a little bit more sense, but whatever. Christians believed it and still believe it, that this prophecy referred to Jesus. And before you get too high and mighty about the fact that you'd say, well, that's 1,200 years later, about 100 years after Jesus lived, the Jewish people had still not given up on the idea of a Messiah, okay? Their idea of actually having a king who would be in charge and be that Messiah, it didn't end with the destruction of the temple. They were still hoping that somebody would deliver them from the Romans, and that person would literally defeat the Romans in battle and kick them out. And this in fact happened around 135. And the person who is responsible for it led the revolt against the Romans. And for 3 years, the Romans were fighting they were fighting against the Judeans, who were led by a Jewish general. And I'll show you a picture of him. We've talked about him before, and you heard of him.
Ah,
Bar Kokhba, Shimon Bar Kokhba. So this is a stamp that Israel did in honor of Bar Kokhba in the 60s. Okay. So from 132 to 135, Bar Kokhba and his zealots succeeded in returning the country to Jewish sovereignty for 3 years. Okay. So we found archaeological evidence from it. We found some amazing caves and hideouts from the Bar Kokhba revolt. Eventually, the Romans took down the Bar Kokhba revolt, and that was the end of it. His name wasn't Bar Kokhba. That's a nickname. Bar Kokhba is Aramaic for the son of Kochav, son of the star. That's what his name was. Bar Kokhba was the son of the star. He was the star that, according to his contemporaries, was the star that rose from Jacob. So not only was he the leader of this revolt, but he took on the nickname as being the son of the star that people believed was part of Balaam's prophecy. So that's 100 years after Jesus. Jews were still looking for that star to rise from Jacob. So this is part of history, this prophecy. So the prophecy's over. Balaam set out on his journey back home, and Balak also went his way. Seems to be the end of the story. Well, I'll tell you this. Balaam makes another appearance before the end of the book of Numbers. It doesn't appear that he got home. Let's just leave it at that. But here at this point, they go their separate ways. It did not work out well for Balak. And it is, that's the scene. So those chapters, I mean, that's quite a lot. Those chapters of the prophecies of Balaam are quite a lot. I will tell you this, Balaam at this point seems to just be doing God's work. He seems like an idiot. We read about him on the ass going, even though God told him not to do it in the first place, and relents. And there seems to be this idea that Balaam, for all of his abilities as a prophet, is kind of an idiot. It's not the end of the story, and it's not the end of him in the Bible, and it's definitely not the end of him in the Midrash. Because by the time we get him in the Midrash, Balaam is an evil person. He's a sorcerer. He's a wizard. He's an agent of evil. He is a bad dude. Not good. And we'll get to that when we finish the story of Balaam and we see what happens with him. It's too early to say that, and I don't want to ruin the story of what happens to Balaam, because let's look at what the text says first before we share what the Midrash says. So I'm only going to share a Midrash after or around the scene that it takes place, like the tents. I'll tell you about the Balaam Midrash when we get to the rest of the Balaam story, or the end of the Balaam. There's not much more, but it's critical to understand who he was and why he's part of our fascination. And I will tell you, the amazing thing is we found definitive proof in another source, in the Deir Allah texts in Jordan, discovered in Jordan, which at least verified in another non-biblical source a biblical character, and he's the earliest biblical character that we have found extra biblical source talking about. So pretty important, and he is definitely important in the Midrash and in our minds. He's definitely an interesting character. We'll talk about it when we get to it. But let's now go into chapter 25. At this point, Israel is looking much better than their ancestors did, much better than the parents and grandparents. These Israelites seem to have their act together. They were complaining about the water, that's true, but they definitely, at least at this point, when Balaam looks out over them, they seem like they're in good shape. It seems like we're in a good place. Feeling good right now. Well, wait. It's going to go to hell right now, which is so strange. And if you want a little lesson in itself, how quickly things can go crazy. All right, here's the next line. While Israel was staying at Shittim, the menfolk profaned themselves by whoring with Midianite women, who invited the menfolk to the sacrifices for their God, and the menfolk partook of them and worshiped that God. So, what just happened? We didn't see that coming. Now,
I got to tell you, I cannot believe some of the text in the Torah, in the Bible, the Old Testament. I just every time there's something that shocks me.
Yeah. Well, this scene is definitely problematic, and look, it gives a very bad view of our ancestors, right? So they're not pulling any punches. But this scene here, I mean, like, where does that come from? Like, you don't see that coming. Now, as much as I would like to say, wow, that doesn't make sense, that couldn't happen, let me tell you, it can 100% happen. I've seen stuff that you would say that was not what was happening next. And I'm not talking about in the movies. I'm talking about in my front of my eyes, where people did things, or I saw something happen one moment and I said, I never saw that happening. I never believed that that was the next thing that was going to happen. Well, this isn't impossible. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, because people do it, and people go from the divine to the, well, I don't know if this is the opposite of divine, but this is definitely not good behavior. And people are capable of doing this. So look, we don't know how long it took between the two scenes. I mean, it doesn't say. But the Moabites are in both stories, because remember, Balak is the Moabite king. So the rabbis kind of infer from this that it didn't happen like, a year later or 6 months. Well, first of all, they're about to cross over into the land. So it can't be that long, because this is all happening in the last few weeks before we cross over. So this isn't like months and months after. Maybe it's a couple days, maybe a week. They're still in the general area of where the Moabites are. We're still on that side of the Jordan River that's like literally the other side of the Dead Sea from Jericho. So here they're in Shittim, this place called Shittim, and Shittim is the Hebrew word for acacia. So it's like saying we were staying over in Acacia village. Acacias are those kind of desert trees that they used to be more plentiful, probably. Well, based on the Bible, it seems like they were in the plentiful. It's what we used for the Mishkan, according to the Torah. It's the wood that we used to build the planks and the frame for the tabernacle. So the Shittim is a tree that they had in that wilderness area. That's the name of the town, but that's not the point. The point is that the men, and again, the text literally says ha'am, the people. So it doesn't say the men literally, but we understood it to be, the men, because they went after the daughters of the Moabites. That's what the King James is going to say. And it's not going to say Moabite women. It's going to say the daughters of Moab. right?
Exactly.
So it's clearly Moabite women. Is it, is it Moabite, Moabite prostitutes? It doesn't say that. It says they went out. It says they did practice whoring with them, but it doesn't say that they were whores necessarily. It says that they behaved that way. The men behaved that way in the sense that they were sleeping with these women as part of the sacrifices. Okay.
Rabbi, what's the point of the asterisk?
Well, here it just tells you that it says it says people. It doesn't say men. The King James doesn't say the men folk. It's, what does it say? The men, the nation, the people, right?
The people.
Yeah. So it's the word like Beth on me. It means people. But they see that these are the men doing this. The whoring is just, again, whether you translate the word zanut, which is zona, is a harlot or a prostitute. We said before, again, the interesting thing is there actually is a word for cultic prostitute, for kadesha. This isn't what they're called. This is common harlotry or prostitution. That's the word that's used for sleeping around. And it clearly is connected to the sacrifice. They sacrifice to their God. So this is seen as some type of cultic prostitution, even though it's not the word for cultic prostitute, maybe in the sense that these aren't necessarily employed cultic prostitutes. These are people engaging in some type of festival where sexual activity was part of the worship. I want to point out that's not uncommon in the ancient world. It's specifically in that area of the Middle East, the Canaanite territories. It doesn't seem to have been that uncommon. So I just want to point out, our services and celebrations at our temple are what they are. And we sometimes say, hey, we can't compete. We have to do our services in Hebrew. We have to do our services with this or that, or synagogues used to not even have musical instruments because it was considered to be, not conducive to Shabbos and holidays, all these things that we had our hands tied behind our back. Can you imagine what it was like in the ancient world? Yeah, they had sex going on. Who's coming to your service when you have sex on the other side? But well, let's put it this way. It's definitely not considered to be the way we're supposed to pray to our God, and our God doesn't have this kind of behavior. So they do it, and you can imagine this is not going to work out well. But that's why I said, I titled this class "The Thrill of Victory to the Agony of Defeat." Well, that's because it happens here in literally one Torah portion. These people go off the rails, and we didn't expect this happening. So again, however we translate it, bottom line is they engage in this worship, this cultic sex worship situation. And this is the generation that, again, should have known better. Thus, Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and Adonai was incensed with Israel. And Baal Peor seems to be, again, the Baal, the Lord or the God of Peor, that area. So there was a Baal that was worshipped in different places. The Baals had different ways of, being depicted, and maybe there was a different statue at Peor than there was, in a different area. But this is the Baal of Peor. This is what was worshipped in this area. The Moabites worshipped, and this is what happens. Now, the rabbis obviously said this isn't a coincidence, that it's the Moabites, the same people who tried to curse us are now doing this. So the Midrash has the step that you and I could say, it makes sense. It's not in the text, but this is what happens. So Balak, who wanted to get rid of Israel, Balak goes to Balaam and says, come curse him, and doesn't work. Backfires. So he goes, that ain't going to work. What can we do? So he goes to his advisors, and they come up with this idea. Let's get the prostitutes out there. Let's get the the worshiping God with the sex, with the orgy. Oh, well, we can get them that way. And that's what happens. So they go to plan B, and plan B works. Because God gets really upset. And you know what happens when God gets upset. Adonai said to Moses, take all the ringleaders, which again, if you look at the note, if you look at the asterisk, the heads of the people, right? These are the Roshei Ha'am, the heads of the people. And by the way, it doesn't say riffraff. It doesn't say the mixed multitude, which it sometimes says when they're going to tell you these people were there was riffraff that were behaving bad. This is the leaders of the people. It says the Roshei Ha'am, which literally means the head of the nation, which is what the King James is going to say, right?
Yeah, it says the heads of the people.
It's the literal translation. And Moses said to Israel's officials, which are the Shoftim, it says the Shoftei Israel, the judges are the officials of the people. Each of you slay those of his men who attach themselves to Baal Peor. So he basically turns to the different people and the different heads of the tribes, the elders, and he says, your people that were part of this, you kill them. I'm not going to kill them. Or I'm not going to send out people to kill them. I'm not sending the Levites out to kill them. You kill your own people who are responsible for this. That's pretty heavy. You're going to clean out. You're going to clean the house yourself. And here's what happens. Just then, a certain Israelite man came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions. And in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community who were weeping at the tent of meeting. Now, it says here that she was Midianite. It doesn't say she was Moabite. So again, we talked about how it seems as though the Midianites are living amongst the Moabites. Again, the Midianites seem to have been nomadic people who were living anywhere. We also know that Moses' own wife, Zipporah, was a Midianite woman. So, however the Midianites are different than the Moabites and the Israelites and everything else, they seem to be more nomadic people, Bedouin people. It's the best way to kind of figure them out. Like, where do they come from? Because they're here with the Moabites. So he comes out, and in the sight of all the people who are there, right? When Pinchas son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, and taking a spear in his hand, he followed the Israelite man into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite man and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Now, we didn't hear anything about a plague, so you didn't miss something. There's something here that happens immediately, which is, God starts killing people. It doesn't say that exactly here. It just said that it says God's wrath, right? It says God was incensed. God's wrath. Something happened. It wasn't just God got angry. God felt bad. Stuff started happening. People started dying. And Moses's decision, and how do we know this? Because it just only makes sense. And he doesn't say it literally, but like, stuff here has been taken out. So this has been edited. And it's also been, again, it's not even necessarily it's written by a different author, or different authors are here. Something happens in the story, and it was re-edited and reworded so that the full context and the full badness in this was made less gory, graphic, sexual, explicit, everything else. So when we used to make movies in the 40s and 50s, it was a big deal if somebody kissed someone on screen. On television, right? You weren't allowed to show a couple in bed together. I'm not making this up, right? This was the case. Now, we know that that's what happens in the Bible. The stories are there. They're graphic in the sense that we know they're graphic, but the Bible doesn't give us the information for the most part. It doesn't give us all the gory details. You got to kind of imagine it. It's there. It's not like it's not there, but it doesn't say it. Okay, so look, it says right here, he took this woman. No, he didn't just take her. He's having sex with her. They went into a bedroom. They went into a chamber together. They went into a room, into a tent, and they were having sex, and he spears the two of them together while they're having sex. Now, that's a pretty graphic image. I don't remember how old I was when I first read this story, but I was a kid, and I remember saying to my mom, I just read a story about people having sex, and they got speared while they were having sex. That's nasty. And this was, I was a kid. I remember the moment because in a way, as a kid, the first time I hear this story, and if this is your first time hearing the story, I mean, it's obviously very Game of Thrones, as John likes to point out. It's very Game of Thrones, but it's not just the fact that it's gory. It's powerfully meant, it's meant to be powerfully graphic in the sense that he spears them while, look, I mean, the person's having sex, and while he's having sex with the woman, Pinchas stabs him with a spear. I mean, it's the ultimate phallic emphasis to this. You want to spear that woman? I'm going to spear both of you. That's what he's doing. I mean, like I said,
I'm just trying to picture it.
Well,
Not a pretty picture.
picture it.
Well,
but
I'm just trying to.
you can picture it because the Bible just told us this graphic story without getting too graphic about it. But it says he stabbed them through the belly, and so this is.
But both of them at the same time.
Yep.
So who went first? That's what I want. Sorry.
Well,
in all
fairness, if you would like to know, it says the man and then the woman. So it says it goes through the Israelite man and the woman through the. I mean, it doesn't have to be from that side, but it definitely gives you this understanding that, yeah, Pinchas just sent a message to everybody. He sent a message to everyone who was there because it happened right in front of Moses and again, his grandfather Aaron is already dead, but his father Eleazar is there. The priests are there. His father Eleazar is the head priest at this point. He's taken over from his father, remember? So this is happening in front of everybody. And it says the plague of the Israelites was checked. So Pinchas took matters into his own hands, and at least from what it says here, that did it. The plague was over. He saved the day. Now, let's read a little bit more, and then we'll talk.
Hey, Rabbi,
Yeah.
quick question. How many years before was Sodom and Gomorrah than this?
It's a good question. What made you think about that?
Well, because it seems like they've gone off the rail again.
Yeah.
That's all.
And it's happened,
Israel, they can't stay on the straight and narrow.
and it's happened in the same general area of where Sodom and Gomorrah is too. So it's meant to be connected. And so the fact that you saw that connection is great because it is connected. Not only that, if you recall, the end of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah ends with Lot leaving the town with his two daughters, right? And they're the only survivors of the town. And because remember, Lot's wife, the girl's mothers die. They think that they're the only ones left. They're living in a cave. And of course, they rape their father. Lot ends up having sex with his two daughters. One of those grandchildren/children, remember, is Ammon. The other one is Moab. So the Moabites and the Ammonites are descendants of that final act of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is the rape of Lot by his own daughters. So yeah, the fact that these people behave this way and are going to bring you down is not a coincidence. Now, lest you think that means the Moabites and the Ammonites are bad people and they're wicked by nature, just remember something. everybody is capable of doing good things or bad things. And it's not just dependent on your culture. It definitely doesn't help. And the Israelites want you to know that, yeah, the Moabites and the Ammonites are freaky people. They're descendants of incest and they are freaks. Okay. They are in a not any way that I'm condoning. The equivalent would be saying that these people are hillbilly freaks. That's what they're saying. The Moabites and the Ammonites are like that. They're the product of weird incestual behavior, and they do weird things. No question. No question. The things haven't changed that much that wasn't meant to be the lesson from it. But wait, we know that one of these Moabites later on, much later on, about 3 generations before King David, is the woman Ruth, who is King David's great grandmother. So Moabite women, or Midianite women in this case, can do some bad stuff, but they're also capable of doing some beautiful stuff. And not only are they capable of doing beautiful stuff, but one of them is our ancestor. And that's Ruth. So just so you know, the Torah does not condemn people forever because of their ethnicity or because of their genetics. Not at all. And Lot is one of our relatives anyways. He was Abraham's nephew. So these people are related to us through Abraham anyways. So lest you think that they're that different, and look, we engage in this behavior with them because of them, it's not good. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000. Now, that is a horrible way to end the Torah portion. This is the maftir that kids who read the Torah portion, Balak, have to finish with. They have to finish with this. Now, it's not good. It does not end well. The Torah portion has this beautiful prayer, matovu, has this beautiful story of the blessings of our people, but it ends with this. Now, it ends with the plague ending, which that's good. It doesn't end, the people are dying of the plague. The plague's over when the thing ends. So you could argue, well, it doesn't exactly end on a happy note, but it also well, at least it's over, but it's a tough portion. And that last part, if you're the bar bat mitzvah kid, that's your maftir. That's what you're reading. So now I'm just going to tell you, I got a problem. I got a problem when I'm reading this with a 13-year-old kid. I'm just telling you, the Bible is not for children. That's the maftir. That's the likelihood. Again, if a kid has a bar mitzvah in June, happens to be the portion right after the kids that are coming to Israel. No, 2 after that. So it'll be roughly end of June this year, but that's not the point. I mean, there's going to be a lot of kids in America who are reading this as their haftarah. I mean, as their maftir before their haftarah. I mean, they're reading this. This is the part that they're reading. That's the end. So that's where we end the Torah portion. That's not where the Christians decided to end it. And the reason that they didn't end it here is because while the plague ended and makes for a good transition, it doesn't tell us what happens to Pinchas, which is what happens here. Adonai spoke to Moses saying, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, has turned back my wrath from the Israelites by displaying among them his passion for me, so that I did not wipe out the Israelite people in my passion. So he stepped up and turned back my wrath. So God says, look, I was destroying the people. I was on a rampage and I stopped. And Pinchas is the one who did it. So the Torah portion is actually named after Pinchas. It's named after him, even though it's, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, that God spoke to Moses. And we're not going to begin the portion. That's not where the name's going to be. It's coming from Pinchas right here. So here we read what happens to Pinchas, which is say, therefore, I grant him my pact of friendship, which I think is a horrible translation. But if you look at the note, of course, it says, actually, it doesn't say, it says, no, that actually doesn't. It's basically just saying it's written as shalom, shalem instead of shalom, but that's not the issue. The issue is it's a pact, a covenant of peace. That's usually the way it'll be translated, right? That's what the King James says.
Yeah, King James says my covenant of peace.
Also not necessarily a great translation because it doesn't seem like a really peaceful thing that he did. Shalom definitely has a sense of peace, but it's really a sense of harmony, and it's a sense of balance, and a sense of wholeness. It's a sense of completeness, right? So the word shalom we usually translate as peace, but it's really not peace in the sense that like it just has to be peace based on like people liking each other or being friendly with each other, but it's a sense of contentment. The root shalem means wholeness, fullness. When you want to say I'm full or I'm content, it's shalem. It's something that's finished and kind of complete. So there's a sense here that what he does is friendship, but more completeness or harmony or balance. Now it says flat out that he was passionate for me, which again, the King James, I'm not 100% sure whether it says passionate or zeal. Does it say zeal? Not sure.
Yes, it says zeal.
Yeah. It's a little bit better translation in the sense that passion sometimes means like, love. We think about it as, I have a passion for that, which zeal is a little bit, maybe I think of it as a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more intensity than passion. I mean, we use passion a lot for love, for emotional connectedness, more sexual passion, than zeal and energy. This is like, he got in there and he got bloody. I mean, he got in there and got, he was zealous, which is the word we use for a zealot, right? Somebody who's a zealot is somebody who's passionate, but actually does something probably pretty tough and pretty scary can be. So that's what he did, right? He stopped
that's it. Actually, I think, Rabbi, I think it's a good word.
What, passion?
I do. I think because he did it. Sometimes when I hear the word zeal, it's almost for the wrong reasons, right?
Well, it's interesting, right? You're right. And I would tell you that there is a question whether it definitely seems to be rewarded here. But there is this understanding too that Pinchas and zealots in general have the ability to sometimes be blinded by their zeal. And so there is a warning here with Pinchas in that Pinchas is it doesn't say what happens to Pinchas in the Bible. We don't really know. We don't know what happens to him after the Bible. We know that he takes over from his father, Eleazar, and he becomes the priest. But we really don't know what happens to him. And the Midrash actually has it that he is the guy in charge as the priest for about all the way through the Judges period. So not all the way to King David, but he's still around during the time of Jephthah and Samson, and he's the guy in charge. He's kind of like one of those guys that he's been around for a long time, and he knew Moses and he knew Aaron's grandfather. So he's been around for a while. So by the time the Israelites are settling in the land, and they're in that intermediate period before they have a king, and things are kind of wild still. There's kind of like the Wild West. He's one of those guys, right? So he's like one of those guys that survived the Civil War and is now living on the frontier, right? More of that kind of thing. I like to think of him that way. But maybe Dennis Duckwall. I think he's more of a cowboy. But anyways, the problem with him, according to the rabbis, not according to the text, because it's not in the text, was that he actually could have maybe been less zealous. And here's the story that they tell. of Pinchas. So Pinchas earns his covenant, right? And he's given essentially whatever this means. The rabbis it kind of think that like this is basically saying he's now going to be the one who takes over in the next generation after Eleazar. So it's kind of like he's the guy. Like God says, I see this as the guy. But they also see in him this zeal. And so when it doesn't work to his benefit is this scene, which is not in the Bible, but it's based on the Bible story. And for those who remember the story of Judges, it's one of my favorite stories, but it's also a depressing end to the story, is a very Western story. It's the story of Jephthah. And if you recall, Jephthah is asked by his people, the people that live in the tribe of Manasseh and in the Gilead, in the area of Golan, he's asked to defend his people again about 100 years after this from the Ammonites. And he goes to war against the Ammonites and he wins, right? He defeats the Ammonites. Remember the story of Jephthah, he was the son of again, according to the Bible, the son of a prostitute, and his rest of his family disowns him, and they invite him back because he becomes this outlaw bandit. It's a great story. It's a short story, but it's there. Anyways, what does he do? He promises he's going to sacrifice the first thing that comes to him after he comes home in the story of Jephthah. And it's a great story, except this tragedy, right? His daughter comes out and greets him, and he says to his daughter, I've got to sacrifice you because I promised I would sacrifice the first thing that came out to me, and it's you. And the daughter says, you have to go through with it. You have to do it. And so the Bible doesn't really say how it ends, but the assumption is that she got killed. Now, the rabbis are really upset with that. Like, how could that happen? Can't let human sacrifice happen, but yet it seems like Jephthah's daughter was sacrificed. Now, in some versions, the rabbis say that she didn't die. She went off and was exiled and could never marry a guy and basically becomes a virgin, dies a virgin bride, not bride, virgin, whatever, and she never gets to live a life. Other people say, no, he promised to God that he was going to sacrifice her, and they went through with it. Now, what's interesting about that scene and where Pinchas comes about is that supposedly, again, as high priest during that time, Pinchas could have violated that promise, that oath, and not made Jephthah go through with it. So the question is, why did he not do that? Why did Pinchas not do it? Now the story goes, and again, it's not in the Bible, that Jephthah was too stubborn to go and have the thing violated. So he did something wrong. He never should have done the vow in the first place, and he should have gone to Eleazar and to Pinchas, and say, I made a mistake. Release me from the vow. The rabbi said, though, that Pinchas should have gone to him and said, I know you made this vow. You need to invalidate, I'll invalidate it for you. You need to get out of this. You can't do this. And so the rabbis point out that because of his zeal and his passion for teaching Jephthah a lesson, an innocent girl died. And even if she didn't die, she was forced to live the rest of her life without being married or without a kid or whatever it was. But an innocent woman's life was ruined because of the stubbornness and the zeal of the two parents, of the parent and the priest, these two people. Now, again, the story isn't, that part of it is not in the Bible, it's in the Midrash. But they want us to kind of walk away with an idea that maybe Pinchas is not 100% okay. It's not that he's bad, he doesn't do anything bad, but that having zeal is not enough, that you also can't just have passion, but you have to have compassion. You have to have that. And it doesn't say that Pinchas ever has the compassion. So it's interesting Midrash, because the Midrash is obviously teaching us that leaders and people and everybody needs to have zeal, but they also have to have a sense of forgiveness and a sense of compassion. Now, where do we get this from? We get this idea that Pinchas is good, but he's not perfect. There's something off with him. Why? Because I told you this little interesting other Midrash, which is there's 6 portions named after people, right? Sarah has a portion named after her. Noah has a portion named after him. Balak, we just read that portion. Pinchas has a portion named after him. And we also read the portion about the really bad dude Korach. And if you remember what I told you, the rabbis pointed out there's 6 portions named after people, 3 Jews, 3 Gentiles. There's a good, a middle, and a bad in all 3.
Mm,
The good, the middle, and the bad in all in all 3 in both groups. The good, the middle, and the bad. The good one, remember, amongst the Gentiles is Yitro, Moses' father-in-law. The middle one is Noah, because he does good things, but he also doesn't seem to have his act completely together. And the bad one is this guy Balak that we just read about. The 3 Jews on the other side, we have Sarah, who we just think is just an all-around really good, righteous person. The person in the middle is Pinchas, because he doesn't seem to have that compassionate side. And then the really, really bad dude is Korach. So the lesson, of course, is that there's good, bad, and kind of in the middle on anywhere you go amongst Jews and Gentiles. Don't think that they're all on one group. Don't think that they're none in one group. There's a lot. And according, by the way, if you want to take it a little step further, according to the rabbis, most of us are in the middle. We're Benoni. We're not righteous and we're not wicked, kind of in the middle. We do good and bad. And so we kind of represent the majority of the population, the vast majority of the population, which are not good, not bad, just kind of a little bit of both. So, again, it doesn't seem like Pinchas does anything bad necessarily, other than the rabbis are a little scared about people who do this kind of stuff. They want to make sure that if they do this kind of stuff, they also don't always do this kind of stuff. And we never know anything else about Pinchas. So this is all we get. And to some extent, the rabbis are saying, well, if we don't have anything where Pinchas shows some restraint, let's maybe think he's a little too zealous. And again, we saw what happened with the zealots. The group of the zealots were the people who were responsible for the temple being destroyed. And so definitely during the rabbinic period, the rabbis were like, yeah, we got to fight against the Romans, but let's not burn the house down, which is what the zealots did. They burned the house down. They burned the temple down. So the zealots, by nature, the word in our tradition has a little bit of good stuff, also can be a little scary. And interestingly, sometimes God is called zealous or passionate, right? Because when we read in the beginning of the 10 Commandments, when it says, you shall have no other gods before me, it says, I am a jealous God, El Kana. That's what the word says, El Kana. I am a passionate or a jealous God. So God can be passionate or zealous. And then he lets his wrath out. So there's a little bit of, you know what? Sometimes we want God to be zealous, especially for us, to protect us. Sometimes we want God, especially when it's us, take it down a notch and not destroy us. Now, there's another issue here, though, folks. It says right here, it shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of the priesthood for all time, because he took impassioned action for his God, thus making expiation for the Israelites. So his act of passion ended up making expiation. It was chaper, like in Kippur. It made the situation, again, fixed to some extent because there was expiation. There was atonement. Now, they get to be priests. They get to be in charge. And he does, again, he continues this legacy. Now, it has been pointed out throughout history, going back to the rabbis, making comments on the Torah in the Midrash and in the rabbinic sources going back a long time, that this scene right here happened in the sight of Moses. Now, again, Aaron is dead by this point. So Eleazar, his son, was there, Pinchas was there. Well, actually, it doesn't say Eleazar was there, but we assume that Eleazar is there. Eleazar right there. But it happens in front of these guys. And it's been pointed out that Moses' lack of action is problematic. That Moses right here maybe shows us why his leadership time is coming to an end.
mhm.
And so the rabbis were keen to point out, and again, they saw it, that maybe Moses, again, is somewhat past his prime and isn't ready anymore for the kinds of leadership responsibilities. Now, you can make the argument, well, he's been told he's going to be relieved, but he hasn't been relieved yet. And so if Moses is still making a case for himself, the rabbis kind of imagine it this way. Moses still wants to kind of, be in charge. And after this scene, there's kind of an unscripted or undocumented here in the text situation where God basically says to Moses, why didn't you do anything? Where were you? Why didn't you stop this? Your job in the past has been to kind of intercede, right? To get the people to fix it. You didn't do anything, Moses. You stood there and your nephew or your grandnephew, because Eleazar is his nephew, Pinchas would be his great nephew. Your great nephew fixed it. You didn't. So Moses here is not seen as being in full capacity of leadership. So this is a little bit of a problem in that Moses seems to have not stepped up, which the rabbis point out. Now, you could also make the argument that, Pinchas jumps in and does it before anyone else does. And maybe Moses was going to do something and, maybe he just did it a little bit faster than everybody else. He's younger and he's more on the ball, whatever. It doesn't say that Moses wasn't going to do it, but there is this possibility again that he wasn't ever, or that just he was late in coming, or again, not as fast as Pinchas.
He was pretty old at that time, wasn't he?
Well, he was 120. And so the rabbis kind of say is like, this is proof that Moses couldn't lead anymore and had to stay on the other side of the Jordan because he can't lead. Now you could make the argument, yeah, he's old. He should, of course he's not going to be spry. He's not going to jump up and get involved here. But I don't know. I've seen people who are older be pretty spry, Joyce. I mean, so we don't want to let him off the hook just because of his age. But the rabbis imagine that this is a proof that Moses is kind of needs to transition out. Yeah. John,
have we seen any scenes where Moses was violent? I don't recollect anything.
Yeah, but we've seen Moses throw the 10 commandments, right? He chucked the 10 commandments.
And he hit the rock.
He hit the rock.
Yeah, that's different from killing people.
Yes.
I want to ask you a question. Okay? I'm going to ask you a question. Because again, it happened a long time ago. I want to happen a long time ago, right?
Right.
Let's peel back to to Exodus, sorry. Let's peel back to Exodus, right? So we read about Moses being born here. He's put into a basket, chapter 2, verse 3. He's in it. His sister's watching him. He gets put in. And then he says, right? Take this child and nurse it for me, and I'll pay your wages, right? Right. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And then the child grew up, verse 10, and she named him Moses. She takes the baby back. Right. That's verse 10. All right. Let's look at verse 11. Sometime after that, Moses had grown up. He went out to the kinsfolk and witnessed the labors. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He turned this way and that and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. So Moses almost, now it's all, in all fairness, we don't know anything about Moses, but literally he's in a basket, he gets nursed, he comes back, and the next thing he does is he's killing somebody. So Moses is capable of killing people. Let's just put it this way. We know that he has it inside of him. Why? Because the first time we ever saw him gold, he's actually killing somebody. So Moses is capable of it. Moses has also got maybe a little bit of temper. And what is Moses? What is Moses's, if Moses has a weakness, maybe it is that he has a temper. It is the fact that he could he could go off the rails and do that to somebody if they got out of line. So, I don't know. The interesting thing about Moses is that I'm a little too close to the subject. I love Moses, right? I'm named after Moses. And I sometimes have to take a little bit of a breath. So I'm going to tell you, I usually err on the side of saying Moses had a right to get angry sometimes, but could Moses have done what Pinchas had done? Would he have done it 40 years earlier, 60 years earlier, 80 years earlier? I don't know, but he's definitely capable of it. You can make the argument. You make the argument, by the way, too, John, that Moses doesn't want to kill or hurt his own people. He has no issue killing an Egyptian, but man, Pinchas has an ability to kill somebody in his own group, in his own people. Now, again, I don't, look, Moses also tells the people, you go out and take care of the people yourself. You got to kill your own people who are responsible for this. So look, I don't know. I tend to be a little bit, like I said, I tend to usually err on the side of cutting Moses a break, that he did what he had to do. But yeah, look, the rabbis have no issue telling us that Moses's fault is his temper, that his temper was a problem, and that he sometimes did not check his temper. But I think usually his temper even is somewhat taken in check, and he's especially restrained with his own people, I think. But look, maybe that's one of his weaknesses, was he's too protective of his people. And Pinchas says, no, we got to get rid of this now, Moses. This is killing our own people right now. There's going to be a lot more people die of plague. I'm going to kill one of these guys that's responsible for it in front of everybody, and you're going to see what's going to happen. And that's what happens. It stops. So
was the plague a plague, or was the plague?
That's what it says. It says the plague wiped out people. It said it killed 24,000 people. And the word for magefa, the word for plague, is the word for a plague. It's the word, like when we talk about the 10 plagues, we don't even use that word for the 10 plagues in the book of Exodus. We actually use, they're not called the plagues. We call them the plagues later on. Well, I actually told you too that for the people who study the biblical authorship issue, we're not even sure that anyone imagined there'd be 10 plagues initially. There's maybe two versions of plagues, and one author writing some of the plagues, and they were combined together as 10 plagues. The Bible never says, and this is the 10th plague, or these are. So I don't want to get into, I'm not going to get it too much, other than the word plague is the word that's used for people dying of some kind of disease that, like, you don't even know, like what like probably some kind of, like what they called the bubonic plague. So this is not.
I read it as disrespect. But that's fine. I got it. I just, because he killed two people, and then he was told to take care of the people that were disrespectful. So I took it I went in a whole different way. That's all.
No, but it's not. Look. I will tell you this. You went into it the way that like people would almost like, it invites you to do that, because there's this understanding that, like, yeah, this is a plague, and if you don't get rid of this idolatry, it will spread like a virus. And so the virus is stopped by the action being stopped. It's 100% invited by this, the way the story is laid out. So yeah, Pinchas he ends it. It says that that's how it ended. And it says right here, the name of the Israelite man who was killed, the one who was killed with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, son of Salu, chieftain of the Shemonite, the tribe of Shimon, the Shemonite ancestral house. So the tribe of Shimon, they're that's where this guy's from. He's from that tribe, from the tribe of Shimon. So needless to say, this guy Zimri does not go down in history as a hero. So it's a bad scene. And it says right here, the daughter of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, the daughter of Sur. He was the tribal head of an ancestral house in Midian. So interestingly, they're saying that the ringleaders for this, the people that were responsible on both sides were respected members of their communities, their respective communities. The Midianite woman was part of their people, the heads of their people was part of their head people. So this is not a good scene, and we even have their names. Now, so that's the scene of the plague ending and the people being killed publicly. Now, here's the interesting thing. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, assail the Midianites and defeat them, for they assailed you by the trickery they practiced against you because of the affair of Peor and because of the affair of the kinswoman Cosbi, the daughter of the Midianite chieftain, who was killed at the time of the plague on account of Peor. Now, all of a sudden, the plague responsibility and the idolatry responsibility is put on the Midianites. It's not put on the Moabites, which is strange because it seemed like it was
Mm-hmm.
the Moabites that were responsible for this whole scene as it's happening, right? Is it's happening within the Moabite territory, and now the Midianites are being held responsible for it. Now, it says that, it says in here that it says that when this first started happening, right? It says they profane themselves with Moabite women, right? So it's not like it would be obvious to me or to anybody reading this on the face of it that all of a sudden the Midianites are responsible when it was a Midianite woman in this scene. But why was, if they're Moabite women and there's Midianite women, they're all mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
What's the issue now? Go get the Midianites. Why are they the ones? So, it's interesting because, traditionally the rabbis say, well, they're Moabite, Midianite, they're all mixed up. And, it's like at that point, they're using them interchangeably. But I don't think so. I don't think it's interchangeable, and I don't think it's an accident. I think it was a clear, intentional dig at the Midianites. And I think that every time you see the Midianites being picked on and chosen to be humiliated and chosen to be the source of the problem, you're actually reading you're reading a rant and probably, again, not a coincidence that they're bashing the people that Moses was married to. And there was a Midianite, it was a smear campaign against the Midianites because of Moses and because of his wife being Midianite. And I think that they picked on them in particular because this is a dig on Moses's choice of family, if you will. And again, to me, it's not fair because we just said Yitro is a Cohen of Midian, a priest of Midian, is a hero. He has a Torah portion named after him. He's considered the best representation of the Gentiles. He's the hero, if you will, in every sense of the word. So the Midianites they're not all bad, but when there's this authorship issue and I think you can actually see it in the Bible. I think you can actually, it was actually one of the ideas I had is if I ever had done a doctoral dissertation, it was actually on this issue of how the Bible authors picked on different authors picked on different nations. And I didn't invent this idea that there's a gripe against the Midianites, and it specifically had to do with Moses being married to a Midianite. So every time you slag the Midianites, you're doing it to Moses. It's actually not a dig on the Midianites as much as it's a dig on Moses and his family. And why? Because Aaron and his family, the priests, are the ones who are in charge, and Moses and the Levites are not in charge. And so I think it's not just a dig on Moses, but also on his descendants, the Levites. I think there's a intentional axe to grind here when you bring in the Midianites in particular. But that's all I'm going to tell you about it. Nobody would have read the doctoral dissertation. Nobody cares. And so that's why I'm not a biblical scholar, because nobody cares. But I do think it's interesting because it actually tells us why these things exist in the Bible and why there were these digs that seem like, where the heck did that come from? And when I read the Bible, I look at that and I say, well, that's not fair. The Moabites are the ones responsible for this at least as much as the Midianites. Why this? And it only makes sense if it's a dig on the Midianites because of the axe to grind, because of Moses, or because, again, somebody really didn't like the Midianites. And we have really no the reason why they wouldn't like him other than Moses's wife, Zipporah, was a Midianite. So that is, this is open season on the Midianites is what we just read. Go after them, get them, because they are responsible for this terrible situation. When the plague was over, Adonai said to Moses and to Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, because now you can see Eleazar's in charge, take a census of the whole Israelite company of fighters from the age of 20 years up by their ancestral houses, all Israelite males able to bear arms. So Moses and Eleazar the priests on the steppes of Moab at the Jordan near Jericho gave instructions about them. Namely, those from 20 years and up, as Adonai had commanded, the eligible male descendants of the Israelites who came out of the land of Egypt were Reuben, Israel's firstborn, descendants of Reuben, Enoch, Hanoch, the clan of the Enochites, son of Palu, the clan of the Paluites, of Hezron, the clan of the Hezronites, of Carmi, the clan of the Carmites. These are the clans of the Reubenites. The men enrolled came to 43,730. Now, this census that's done is in addition to the census that's in the book of Numbers, the beginning of the book of Numbers, when the people that came out of Egypt are being counted. These are the people that are now entering the land of Israel. Now, we go by, again, 20 years and up. And again, it says right there, able to bear arms. This is not just so we can know how many men we have, how many people we have. It's to know how many soldiers we have. That's what this is about. So 43,730 men able to bear arms are now part of the Reubenites at this point. Born to Palu, Eliab. Sons of Eliab were Nemuel and Datan and Abiram. Right? These are the same Datan and Abiram chosen in the assembly who agitated against Moses and Aaron as part of Korach's band when they united against Israel. Whereupon the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with Korach. When that band died, when their fire consumed the 250 men, they became an example. So Reuben, you've already lost some of your people. Why? Because they were part of Korach's band. But it says right here, the sons of Korach did not die. And that is the interesting line here, which, as we said, the Korachites are still mentioned in the book of Psalms years later. And it says right here that they did not die with their father. So just because their father was a bit of a putz, they didn't die. They are good. Guess what? It means that just because your father or mother did something wrong and had bad problems, doesn't mean that you have bad problems. And quite frankly, you gotta be your own person, because you're not doomed for them. You also though can't use that as an excuse. You can't use it as an excuse. It's not going to fly, because other people died here who were part of the Korach band, who were parts of Datan and Abiram's family. So you could be struck if you did the wrong thing, but not because of who you were, not because of who your father was. The descendants of Shimon by their clans of Nemuel, the clan of the Nemuelites, of Jamin, the clan of the Ammonites, of Yachin, the clan of the Yachinites, of Zerach, the clan of the Zerachites, of Saul, the clan of the Saulites. Now, if you look at this, it says Shaul, right? That's the name. We usually think of Saul as King Saul, but this is not that Saul. This is a Saul that is a descendant of Shimon. These are the clans of Shimonites, men enrolled 22,200. That's a pretty small tribe, Shimon. And we just read about one of those guys. He's not there anymore. Zimri. He's gone. The descendants of Gad by their clans of Zephon, the clan of the Zephonites, of Chagi, the clan of the Haggites, of Shuni, the clan of the Shunites, of Ozni, the clan of the Oznites, of Eri, the clan of the Erites, of Arod, the clan of the Arodites, of Arieli, the clan of the Arielites. Those are the clans of Gad's descendants, men enrolled, 40,500. So that's a little bit bigger, around 40,000, right? Well, you're going to guess it's going to be roughly around 40,000 each because there's 12 tribes and roughly 600,000 men. So that's about 40,000. So that's about right. 22,000 is small, which means some clans or some tribes are a little bit bigger, like about the one we're going to get to. Born to Judah, Aaron-Onan died in the land of Canaan. That's way back in Genesis. Descendants of Judah by their clans of Shelah, the clan of the Shelonites, of Peretz, the clan of the Peretzites, of Zerach, the clan of the Zerachites. So again, Shelah, the only one of the three sons of Judah, survived. Only one son, only one son of Judah ended up having sons, and that was Shelah, who had Peretz and Zerach. Okay, so that's not a lot, you'd think, but of course, the descendants of Peretz, of Chezron, of the Chezronites, of Chamul, the son of the Hamalites, those clans are the clans of Judah. Men enrolled 76,500. So these two guys, Peretz and Zerach, ended up having a huge family, even though they're Judah's only grandsons. So the other fathers of the tribes, right? The other sons of Jacob, the other original descendants of Jacob, some of them have a lot of grandkids. Judah didn't, but yet he has 76,500 family members that are going to cross over now. That's a huge increase. That means Judah's family did really well in Egypt. They did really well in the desert. They survived. We know they were better than the other people. We read about Caleb. We read about those people. They did better. And of course, they're going to do better later because that's the tribe that King David is from. And it's the tribe that most of us are from as well. The descendant of Issachar by their clans of Tola, the clan of the Tolaites, of Puva, the clan of the, and this is interesting, the Punites, right? The Punites, but it's Pua or Puva. Of Yashub, the clan of the Yashubites, of Shimron, the clan of the Shimronites. These are the clans of Issachar. Men enrolled 64,300. And again, these numbers are very close, and the names are the same names that we read earlier on in the book of Numbers when we first had numbers and censuses, which is the way the book began. The descendants of Zebulun by their clans of Sered, the clan of the Seredites, of Elon, the clan of the Elonites, of Yachleel, clan of the Yachlelites. Those are the clans of the Zebulunites. Men enrolled 60,500. Pretty big. These last couple of tribes are all pretty big, 64, 60,000. The sons of Joseph were Manasseh and Ephraim by their clans. The descendants of Manasseh, of Machir, the clan of the Machirites. Machir begot Gilad. Of Gilad, the clan of the Giladites. And these are the sons of Gilad. Of Yezer, the clan of the Erzerites. Of Chalek, the clan of the Helekites. Of Asriel, the clan of the Ashvelites. Of Shechem, the clan of the Shechemites. Of Shemitah, clan of the Shemidites. Of Chefer, the clan of the Cheferites. Now, Zelophehad, the son of Chefer, had no sons, only daughters. The name of Zelophehad's daughters were Machlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And these 5 daughters of Zelophehad become very, very important. These are the clans of Manasseh. Men enrolled 52,700. Now that's only, remember, one half of Joseph's kids, because again, you have Ephraimites too. So Joseph has he has 2 clans, 2 tribes that come out of him, Manassites and Ephraimites. Now we're going to read about these daughters of Zelophehad, because it says right here, they were part of the Manassites, and they have a problem, which is that they do not have brothers. And there's going to come to this book of the Bible. By the time we end the book of Numbers, we're going to read about them again, which is what it happens to them and to their family, because they don't have brothers that would inherit. We will see. These are now the other part of Joseph. These are the descendants of Ephraim by their clans, of Shuthelah, the clan of the Shuthalites, of Becher, the son of the Becherites, of Tachan, the clan of the Tachanites. These are the sons of Shuthelah. Of Iran, the clan of the Aaronites. Those are the clans of Ephraim's descendants, men enrolled 32,500. Those are the descendants of Joseph by their clans. And again, the descendants of Joseph are Ephraim and Manasseh. So again, 32,500 there, 52,700. That's, 86,000, 87,000 between the two, or 80,000 between the two parts of Joseph. So you can see he's got the most descendants of the 12 sons of Jacob. He's got more even than Judah. So next we get the Benjaminites, right? The descendants of Benjamin by their clans: of Bela, the clan of the Belites; of Ashbel, the clan of the Ashbelites; of Achiram, the clan of the Achiramites; of Shephuapham, the clan of the Shephupham, the Shuphamites; of Hufam, the clan of the Hufamites. In Hebrew, by the way, it's easier. It's the Shufami. It's not the Shufamites. It's the Shufami. The descendants, the sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman; of Ard, the clan of the Ardites; of Naaman, the clan of the Naamites. Those are the descendants of Benjamin by their clans, and men enrolled 45,600, which is about average. Would come out to average for 12 tribes. These are the descendants of Dan by their clans, of Shuham, clan of the Shuhamites. Those are the clans of Dan by their clans. All the clans of the Shuhamites, men enrolled 64,400. So not a lot of descendants, not a lot of clan members, but they do have 64,000. That's a lot. The descendants of Asher by their clans: of Imnah, the clan of the Imnites; of Ishvi, the clan of the Ishvites; of Berea, the clan of the Berites; of the descendants of Berea: of Cheber, the clan of the Cheberites; of Malchiel, the clan of the Malchielites. The name of Asher's daughter was Sarah. And again, she's picked out by name. That's very rare to get a woman that's picked out by name. And it's very, very rare, again, for someone from this period of time to be for a woman to be mentioned at all. And it says these are the clans of Asher's descendants, men enrolled 53,400. It doesn't say anything about the rest of Bnei Asher, the Asherites. It doesn't say anything else about them. It just says that Serach was his daughter. So she was obviously very important. It was mentioned here. We have an interesting teaching here, by the way. Why does it mention her like this, right? Why does it mention her specifically? Again, the name of Asher's daughter was Serach, right? It says here, it would say the sons of Bela were the descendants of Benjamin, right? Here it doesn't say that. It says that his daughter, right? Shem bat Asher was Serach. That was her, just says in her name. So the rabbis have a teaching that Serach is still alive. She lives a remarkably long time, that she has like a crazy gift of living from the time of her, again, before the people even go into slavery, and she's still around. So they like this idea that Serach is this really aged lady who's seen everything. She's there to tell the story. She's there, who's the receptacle, Serach, of all the information, of all the knowledge. She's the one that if somebody wanted to know what was Jacob like, they could talk to her. That was her grandfather. So this is this interesting idea that there's still this woman around who can tell the tales. She's the wise old lady, Sarah. She's the one who was there from the beginning. Anyways, but it is interesting that it points her out by name and just says just throws it out there. The descendants of Naphtali by their clans, of Yachziel, the clan of the Yachzielites, of Guni, the clan of the Gunites, Guni, of Yezer, the clan of the Ezerites, of Shalem, the clan of the Shelemites. Those are the clans of the Naphtalites, clan by clan, men enrolled 45,400. And guess what? That's the end. This is the enrollment of Israelite men, 601,730, which is pretty much how many we came in to the desert with. There was not, according to this, a change in numbers. 600,000. Now it's 601,000. That a generation later, you just had a replacement. So something's going on here that needs, again, some kind of explanation. How could you go into the desert with the same amount of people? Now we know that the men all died, right? All the men that came in, it says, are going to die because of their lack of faith, but they're being replaced. Now you can make the argument, it shows at least an understanding that they didn't thrive in the desert. At least they didn't have a lot of kids in the desert. That's one possibility. There's another possibility, which is in the ancient world, numerical strength, once you're reached a certain numerical strength, it doesn't, in their minds at least, it doesn't change that much. I'm saying this because it's led some people to believe that these numbers are not accurate. That these numbers actually reflect more of what the numbers were like during the time of King David. That there's around this many men. We're not even sure that there's that many men during the time of King David, but let's assume there was. The theory goes is that people either didn't understand exponential growth, they didn't believe that it had happened, or that, again, people, as long as you're replacing your population, that's okay. I mean, look, they understood exponential growth because they had us going down to Egypt with 70 people, and we leave with 600,000 men. So they understood that exponential growth could happen over a few generations, or somebody did, because it's in the Bible. But, you know, are they saying that the people that came out of Egypt are roughly the same amount of people later on during the time of King David? I mean, we don't really know, but it is interesting that this amount of people that would have lived in the desert, it would have been really hard for them, that many people, to have lived in the wilderness. Just to have that many people in the wilderness would have been difficult, but the number doesn't change effectively in the last 40 years. So, and we read, Adonai spoke to Moses saying, among these shall the land be apportioned as shares according to the listed name. With larger groups, increase the share. With smaller groups, reduce the share. Each is to be assigned its share according to its enrollment. The land, moreover, is to be apportioned by lot, and the allotment shall be made according to the listings of the ancestral tribes. Each portion shall be assigned by a lot, whether for larger or smaller groups. So we are doing this all by a draw. This is not, we're not forcing people to go into a certain area. They're going to take a lot and they're going to draw it out, and whatever they get, that's what they get. But you will get more if you have a larger tribe. So they do this allotment based on the population, based on how much land the people would need. But again, keep in mind, give people the land, not based on how many people there are, but how many men can defend it. So if there were a lot of kids and if there was a lot of women, that's wonderful. But the assumption was you have to be able to defend it. And so you had it defended by however men you counted in that area. They did not count people, men, women, and children together. It says they counted by the men because they really did need to make sure that the territories that they created were defensible. This isn't like a little thing. You know, we probably even wouldn't think about that today, but we do. We would need to if we were creating territories or boundaries. You'd want to have something that you could defend. So this is what they did. So that's how they figured it out. Which territories you got were based on the able-bodied soldiers that you could have defending it. Doing this by lot, doing this by a draw. Famous story. Some of you might remember that our tour guide told us when we were in Tel Aviv, the original layout of the street of Tel Aviv on Rothschild Boulevard, which person got which house was done according to the records. Very famous drawing that they had where every family put in their number and they drew out the lots for who got what house on the street when they first divided up the original street in Tel Aviv. So that is Rothschild Boulevard, which still exists today. It is very fancy, very expensive today. But yeah, it was done by a lottery. Yeah. And finally, we finish with this last tribe today, the Levites. This is the enrollment of the Levites by their clans. Of Gershon, the clan of the Gershonites; of Kohath, the clan of the Kohathites; of Merari, the clan of the Merarites. These are the clans of Levi: clan of the Libnites, the clan of the Hebronites, the clan of the Machlites, the clan of the Mushites, the clan of the Korahites. Kohat begot Amram. Now, what's interesting here is that we get this other remembrance of the name of Amram's wife was Yocheved, daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. She bore Amram Aaron and Moses and their sister Miriam.
Mm.
This is the first time in the entire Bible that we get Moses's family. Right there. That's it. This is the first time in the book of Numbers. This is the first time that we learn her name. That's it. That's the first time. This is the first time that it says flat out that Aaron and Moses and Miriam were all born, by Amram. And this is it. We know that Miriam is Moses' sister because of other places where, like we read in Numbers, where Moses intercedes and prays for his sister. And this is the first time that it's actually said they were all part of one family. We knew it. It said his sister, but this is the first time that it laid it out like that. I flipped real quick to the story in Genesis chapter 2. You already saw it. It doesn't actually call her Miriam in that story. We know that it's Miriam, but it doesn't actually call her out like that. This is an interesting thing about Moses. We don't have a lot of details about his childhood. We don't have a lot of description about his family. And what's also important is we have no idea what happens to his family, to his clan. Now, we assume, by the way, right here, it says Mishpachat Hamushi is Moses. The Mushites, we don't know that for sure. We assume that, but we don't know that for sure even. If it is, then it says that Moses has a clan, has a group of Levites that are known as Mushites, the descendants of Moshe. But we don't know that for sure. And if that's it, that's it. There's nothing else about Moses' descendants. We really don't know anything about his family. It's not good. Now, either his family went off the rails, which is a possibility. We mentioned it, that his sons and grandsons got corrupt and had a problem as Levites. We know that they probably weren't really loved by Aaron's family, the Kohanim, because the Levites are moved out of power, as we know. The Kohanim took over and don't let the rest of the Levites really do anything, but that's it. We don't know anything really about the Levites other than they're supposed to live among the people. But Aaron, it says, to Aaron were born Nadav and Avihu, Eleazar and Itamar, his 4 sons. And of course, Nadav and Avihu, we read in Leviticus, they died when they offered alien fire before Adonai. The enrollment of 23,000 comprised all males from 1 month up. They were not part of the regular enrollment of the Israelites, since no share was assigned to them among the Israelites. Right? The Levites and the Kohanim don't get counted for territory. And so they're telling you here, their numbers are their numbers. This is how many Levites and Kohanim we have. These are how many people are in that tribe, but it really doesn't matter because they're not getting land. So whatever number they have, that's how, you know how many there were, but it doesn't matter because they're not getting a tribal share. They're going to live amongst you. These are the males enrolled by Moses and Eleazar, the priest, who registered the Israelites on the steppes of Moab at the Jordan near Jericho. Among these, there was not one of those enrolled by Moses and Aaron the priest when they recorded the Israelites in the wilderness of Sinai. And so what they're saying right here was that all those other people by this point in time had died, with the exception of Caleb and Joshua, and obviously Moses and Aaron. Well, Aaron had died. I mean, Aaron just died, but everybody else is dead. None of the other 600,000 that had gotten registered at the beginning of the book of Numbers are there. And that's why it's so fitting that here towards the end of the book of Numbers, the numbers are the same or roughly the same, and they've all been replaced. So what are the numbers? The numbers are more replacement numbers. The numbers are there not just to tell us how many people there are, but to tell us that those people had been replaced with a new generation. There's a new group here now. They're different. They're roughly the same numerically, but mentally, at least, they're supposed to be different. They're supposed to have been replaced. This generation came out, has been replaced. And here it says, Adonai had said of them, they shall die in the wilderness, not one of them survive, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. And that is the end of, to some extent, the last chapters of Numbers are all about how we got to that last number. And look, when we look at the book of Numbers, we're right here, right? And the last chapters we're going to read in the book of Numbers are going to take us home, because these people have now been replaced. These people have been replaced. And when we come back next week, and again, we'll be in person and online, we will read of the daughters of Zelophehad. And that's not the only thing we read about, but that's one of the stories we read about, how they figure out what to do with people when they don't have male relatives, and protect them so that they can still have what's due them as part of a family, as part of a community, and that women are guaranteed protection. So it's an interesting story. Read it again and take a look at this interesting case law, because here we have a story of Moses having to come up with a law, and the Torah essentially giving us a law as it unfolds. As the story unfolds, that's how we get the law. It's not Moses getting a law, God telling Moses, hey, this is what I'm telling you to do. Moses is essentially going to show us. Sometimes you have to have a law set by something that happens, a precedent that actually, kind of makes us have a law. So we didn't have a law for it, but now we do. That sometimes happens, and that happens even in the Torah. We're going to see next week that the Torah actually has this case law. So with that, folks, I hope to see you on Shabbat. I hope to see you in person Friday. We have service, a celebration for Shabbat. And then tomorrow, we begin the month of June. So this first service in June, first Shabbat of June, and a chance for us to start off the month of June, definitely a month of summer. We hope that you travel safe and that you have some really good days ahead as we go into the month of June together. So take care, everybody. Thank you for being here. I
Thank
look forward
you.
to you in person, and again, we'll be in person and online next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks, Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Bye.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Be
Yes.
well.